Welcome to the 12th episode of My Story, Your Story, Our Story, whatever the story. Where I left you in, well, it's multiple facets and timelines since 2005, but in the timeline of reality, I think we were around 2006. We'll get back to that later. At this point in time, episode 12, this is 12 of my story, actually coincides with what I decoded as the 12th, the next big thing in history, which came in modern times when man created atomic power and weapons, both incredible power and the power to destroy ourselves. And that is important in the grand scheme of things when we mark our net present value of reality to market. And just to set the record straight, back in 2005, maybe it was a radioactive, insane mind racing beyond prescribed speed limits and with grandiose ideas beyond the mind of creating a global enterprise of all of us as one world under, well, one God or one us, under one spirit of truth. And actually in the last one, last episode, my story 11, I articulated the postulation, the theory that I had, that the Messiah of the future is already here. He's us. That we are our own Messiah. We are our own worst enemy. The mess. Selfishness. What a revelation. But within us is the spirit of truth that can achieve a new reality. Now, if you believe in the context that your reality may in fact be sort of upside down, intentionally sort of, not even sort of, a beautiful lie, created by whatever God might be. And I'm not going to blaspheme any religion because they're a key part of our story. In fact, they're the story of our story. But here's the thing that you have to understand when you're contemplating this future vision that I had of a global world enterprise owned by all people, not necessarily all equally, but owned by all people and integrated with all people, where governments and nations and politics and corruptions are sort of designed out of the system, and not sort of, they're just really designed out of the system, because basically the foundation of the enterprise that I envisioned was a cancellation and elimination of all currencies on earth, and a replacement, and just for a placeholder I called them rainbow stars, with a virtual money, well, that is both trackable, traceable, digital, and infinite. Now, the thing about it is this, okay, so when I articulated that you were the Messiah, also, from the beginning of the story, you knew who the angels were, so I just sort of announced and judged among your people, and sort of anointed, anointed angels, Atlas angels, that had already self-anointed themselves, and asked them to become the one of many messiahs that will save our future. Because interestingly, and when I say there is no limit to this, because interestingly, in the present time, within my generation, one generation from now, big thing 12, well, all of the big things in history that I decoded before the next two big things, which one of them was this new future of currency, well, all of the big things in history was 16. And from 12 to 16, the atomic power to now, basically, a third of all the next big things in history have been created. So the pace of change is changing dramatically. And when we change the pace and change the economics of economics, but see, your whole reality is denominated in these pieces of paper. What happens, and this gets very interesting, what happens when all of these pieces of paper are immediately obsolete? What happens? Now, I asked a long time ago because one of the scenarios of the people against the people of all nations, of the nations and their currency, would be the people's currency taking over and fighting it out with the other currencies of nations. But see, and back then I asked you, do you have money insurance? Because your whole reality, no matter what stock you own, ultimately, your stocks and bonds are denominated in these pieces of paper, and these pieces of paper are denominated in debt, and this debt is only paid by an advancement of illusion of prosperity. And anyway, I don't want to get into that, but the long-term situation is this, is that, well, we have the opportunity to become priceless together. That's right. Think about this. Okay, let us just say that I am the Messiah guy, and I'm not announcing that. I don't know. Jesus was here, and so let's say half of Jesus was here, or a tenth of a Jesus. Let's say a billionth of a Jesus was here. Actually, let's just say this was Steve Jobs right here. Now, it would be very interesting if it was Steve Jobs in 2005. Okay, but it would be very interesting if I was Steve Jobs right now in 2012 and you think he's dead. Now, in my movie, see, people that are dead are really alive behind the scenes. In fact, this is where the movie got weird in my head, and actually, when it got to denominations of monies, ultimately my radioactive mind was called bipolar, and one of the conditions of bipolar people is to spend like money like it's going out of style, which has never been my operating principle in life at all, until I started getting to an illusion of the delusion of money. But anyway, so the point would be this. Okay, so what if we had this Steve Jobs bill, and Steve Jobs was one of the founding fathers of the future of Earth. And I could list many founding fathers. I didn't even want to limit it, because see, the more angels and atlases have, the more apostles we have of the message and spirit of truth, of a new world order, of a new world enterprise, advancing the state of technologies and the state of our process and the state of all of us. Okay, the state of our people, not nations. Now, see, here's the thing. Let's say that Steve signed this bill. Well, and he did, and it's okay, it's 10, 21, 12, okay? I used to do that a lot in 2005 and throw those bills around. Now, I'm really down to my short bill, so I'm not going to go crazy and do it higher than denominations. I've gone through a destruction of capital beyond the mind. But actually, well, what is a destruction of capital if the destruction and the purpose of the destruction of capital was the creation of true and infinite wealth? And so, but I don't know what the tax implications are on such a destruction of capital, but in my mind, mine was an investment. Now, some of you may have seen me in 2010 in Las Vegas. Now, in one of my craziest states, walking across the bridge to Caesar's Palace, I was throwing away, well, at least $1,000 worth of bonds. And those baby crazy people in Vegas must think this guy's crazy, because while they're, well, running around the tables hoping to find 1,000, I'm throwing it away. Well, I was investing it, because every one of those picked up became a part of my movie. Of course, that could be a movie, an illusion in my head, but think about the degrees of separation if we really followed a reality movie of us. Well, you see, it was sort of a movie in my head back then from my perspective. Now, there's the perspective of the angels out there, but in my movie of my head, well, they saw me, they realized they didn't need me. They let me go crazy, and they filled me money in the best 3D they had. Well, it's like, oh, almost imagine you having a great asset there, but it's like a terrorist of mind. And yet, well, they're capturing this. It's almost like the Truman Show meets Forrest Gump, where I created my own Truman Show, and I can't get out because I must assume my reality as a crazy old man in your insane land. But in a fantasy, I imagined you realized you were crazy and recreated your reality secretly together. Or I imagined you could do it in the future. Or I imagined you did it in the past before. And so the possibilities and imagineering that can take place when you allow your mind to go Hollywood style. It gets really interesting. And just like a shout out to Hollywood, I'm really pissed off. I've been pissed off for years at the lack of good content and imagineering in Hollywood. All we know how to do is kill and find monsters. And all we know is conflict. How? Well, anyway, we can do far more interesting things than we do. And why can't we even remake the greats when what happened to the greats? Well, anyway, they are black and white depreciated. But the point is this. Let's think about the pricelessness of worthless money. So this is all obsolete. However, if this was Steve Jobs' bill, and this was one of the bills he had when the world went priceless and it was signed by him, maybe even a movie by him, or a movie by me, imagine, and then all of a sudden, what's the value of that bill? Well, in 1,000 years, one could argue it's near priceless. Okay, that's pretty well valued. Well, think about this. What's the value of each of these pieces? You can ask Armando at Alama how to play Money God Monty. Anyway, what's the value of these two pieces? Together is priceless. Apart, we are 2 times priceless. Well, we can keep doing this priceless order of monetary math, because as I rip this pricelessness in half, I now have 4 times priceless. Families 1,000 years from now could be ripping these priceless pieces of papers in half and keeping pieces of paper for themselves, recognizing the generation that recognized that these pieces of paper were worthless, but torn apart and shared, they become multiples of priceless. And priceless is an infinite. And what is multiples of an infinite? That gets to really funny math. But anyway, that's the funny money of us. And so, with only $1 bill invested in this part of the movie, I ask you to consider, what if we had a mind, a world of one mind together, with the right and the left working together, with a common purpose intent, and with one spirit of truth. See, I envision a world where all leaders are working together, and they're not leading a nation of people, they're leading the people in one nation under one God or one spirit of truth. And whether you believe in the traditional nature of God, you must believe ultimately in the spirit of one truth revealed, because if your monetary illusion is a bad illusion, and you have a better illusion to capitalize, even an atheist must see the value in a better illusion. And even one must wonder if this all might be a beautiful lie created by ourselves. Or maybe God was an outer space man. Who knows? Who cares? But there are messages that we know in our hearts and in our books and in our Bibles. And it's so Sunday. I don't go to church because I've always practiced church in here or wherever it is. Okay? But I'm not, well, actually there are more people that can tell these messages better than me. And that's the message, that you are the Messiah, but only when you choose only when you choose not to provoke each other, but to judge among yourselves, and to become yourselves of one mind, and of one spirit of truth, and of one purpose under God, to rise and advance the state of all man, and rise the advance of our learning, because through learning we'll advance the state of our enterprise, and through advancing our enterprise we will reach to the stars, and fulfill our destiny before self-destruction. That is the choice we have with Big Thing 12. That is the choice you will have until you choose peace and justice in her. Thank you. And I would like to remain in the name of Hack 51.